That's 6 o'clock, so we get the high
Spoke too
sign from
soon.
our videographer. It looks like we've got the high sign, so we'll call our meeting to order. And with that, we do have one addition to the agenda that I'm aware of, under new business M. We want to consider it a request from me, I guess, to conduct a periodic evaluation of an employee in closed session at the request of the employee under section 8A of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268. So that's one addition to the agenda. Are there any other additions to the agenda or corrections? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
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 Any opposed say no. The motion's carried. Roll call. Madam Clerk, have you got the roll? Okay, thank you. Next up would be Pledge of Allegiance, and since we have some scouts here to join us, would everybody please rise? And if the scouts would care to lead us in the pledge?
Please remove non-appropriate headgear and put your hand over your heart. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll entertain a motion for the approval of the November 9, 2021 regular meeting. Got a motion and support. Are there any comments or questions, corrections on those minutes? I'm hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. The motion is passed. Thank you. Speeding right down to G, we'll go to resolutions. Consideration of a resolution to authorize budget amendments to allow for the rollover of active purchase orders from fiscal year 2021 budget into the fiscal year 2022 budget. Your pleasure.
Move approval.
Support.
We have a motion support. Any background from staff or?
Yep, I'll say a little bit and I'll turn it over to Curtis because he's the guru on this. As we talked about keeping up on amendments for our budget so we wait to year end, this is a great proper ways of doing accounting, accounting for your projects that are mid-year that actually fall into the next fiscal year. So I'll let Curtis talk if you have any projects that you want to highlight.
Yeah, so really what this was, this actually came up when talking with the auditors when they were here the last couple of weeks, is that our system is set up so that anytime there's an approved signed purchase order prior to fiscal year end, our system is set up where it will automatically roll those projects into the next fiscal year. What the piece that we missed was that, back in July, is that we still need to actually take those amendments to the commission for official approval. So these are all projects that currently in all of our reporting, because our system is showing these as approved projects because they're approved projects, but in order to actually get the money into the current fiscal year where it's actually being spent, we need the commission's sign off to move that money basically from the prior fiscal year to the current fiscal year. So that's what all of these ones are. So these are just all projects that were approved prior to June 30th, but have not actually were not spent as of June 30th.
Good. Thank you, Curtis.
Makes sense.
Next first question. Silence. Go ahead. Do we have a motion on that? We do. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. So all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. And the motion is carried. Thank you. Next, consideration of a resolution to approve the declaration of restrictive covenants for a restricted non-residential remedial action in relation to the 1099 Ferris Street, presented by MRP Properties LLC, and also to authorize the mayor to execute the documents on behalf of the city. Your pleasure.
Move to approve. With the what the heck does this mean?
We have a motion of support, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of color coming in this one.
Yeah, and I'll start off and Dave can fill in there too. This is an agreement where declaration with MRP. This is the property that used to be the old Midwest refinery site. Believe it or not, somehow along the way, we have a sewer main that runs through there. Sewer main, right, Dave? Yes. Sewer main that runs through there. And this is an environmentally sensitive property. There's, used to be a refinery. So there's a lot of environmental covenants and due diligence and all those sort of things that need to happen on there. Before MRP will allow us to go on site to do maintenance on our utility there, they need us to sign this, that we agree to their stipulations for due care when we go on there. When we go on there to do any work, that we call them, they'll have someone come on site, and we will follow the due care procedures that, as we're on site to do that work. So this allows us to maintain our utility, and if we don't sign it, then obviously we can't go on their property to do the maintenance of that utility. So, Dave, is there anything else I'm missing on that?
Yeah, as far as maintenance bill on that, if we have to excavate for any reason, if there's a break in the sewer to excavate in the soils, what this restrictive covenants means is the known chemicals as of their testing, with the most recent testing that they have available. It lists the different chemicals that you'll experience on site when you go there to excavate it, and that we are acknowledging that we know they are there, and that we need to contact Eagle before we do anything on the site, and then they will get in contact with their necessary environmental departments. This goes for the life, eternity of the property. This is going to be filed with the Register of Deeds, so that at any point within now or 500 years from now, that document lists and actually has an environmental reference number that anybody that excavates, you call Eagle with that reference number. They'll open up the file, find out what's there, and make sure that you're following due process and necessary care to protect MRP, as well as any employees that might be out there excavating on the site. We also had Tony review the document to make sure that it covers the city's ends, and we did have one minor adjustment to make. MRP allowed us to make that change, so it's now at a point where it's palatable to us, but also it not only protects MRP, but as well as the city of Element in general and anybody else that comes in contact with that site. This, like Eric mentioned, allows us to do any type of maintenance on that facility, or any kind of easements that we may need to request in the future on that site. This is the first step towards that. There will be others not on that site, but other properties that they've had in the past. So this is the first one of that.
Good, that's the first question.
Wow.
I'm glad we'll have them on site. And they're working on it. We get to have them
Yeah. Couple things come to my mind, David. So right now, we've got this sewer line running through their property. I presume it's active.
Yes.
Right, feeding from the other side of the city, right?
Yes, it takes the sanitary sewer material from the east side of town currently, from Republic, the north end of Republic, takes it to the wastewater plant via their site. It's in an easement that the city has. This is actually on a city development easement, but because it's on their property, they want us to sign this to acknowledge that we know the chemicals that are on that site. Yes.
Okay, so that was my second question. We do have an easement already to
Correct.
work on that site.
Correct.
And what is the consequences if we don't sign this?
That, to be honest with you, I'm not versed as an attorney, but from that
I'm just curious.
aspect, because of environmental compliance,
Yeah,
and
it's
to cover our
required,
employees, I
and,
would not.
and it is noticed, it's noticed to us and to anyone else who might work on the site. Without it, nobody's working on that
Well,
site.
yeah, I mean, there's a huge risk of going on that site.
Well,
to
but
work
what I
on
mean,
it.
statutorily, no one's going on that site, so it is, it really is it's a notice, and so, I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's basically letting everybody know what's there now, and, what they have to do in order to avoid it, or, whatever, and whatever they have to do before they start doing whatever they plan on doing, so.
And it would absolve them of any responsibility if anything were to change in that site. We didn't handle materials correctly, then we're now liable
Aha.
as much as they would be.
But-
And the other one, though, is to make sure that they're doing their due process to alert anybody who can come in contact with their site of known chemicals, and is an alert, and it puts it on file with the state of Michigan permanently.
But the other thing that it does, it protects us because it tells you what's already there, too.
Right.
So we're not gonna get blamed for, anything that's already there, so it's,
And
It's-
I would assume, because of the delicate nature of this property and the chemicals involved and the danger, the risks there, we probably would be subcontracting this out. I mean, if there was ever any work to be done, I doubt we'd send our own crews in there to dig.
Depends on the situation. If we experience what we did on Ferris, and the plumes change as you go westward toward where the processes occurred on the site, if it is a break and there are no chemicals in there, you can identify it based on smell, chemicals, things you encounter in the soil. What I mean is, I'm going to call that number, or whoever's in my position. If we do anything, the first thing we do now with this restrictive covenants, we call that number at Eagle, we let them know what's going on. They're gonna have somebody on site that's going to advise us, and then from there, we take the environmental steps. If it's a matter of covering boots, having respirators, if it's anything we can do. Pretty good assumption is we will not, but I can't carte blanche make you that statement until we contact Eagle and we follow the protocol based on what we experience on site.
And is this line part of the bottleneck that we've talked about runs along the river on Michigan Avenue? Does that feed into this line?
It is a part of it, but what immediately comes into it, you're familiar with that site, just east of that is the area behind the nuns along Michigan Avenue. That's the portion we're going to abandon, that's the reason for Ferris. It will, Ferris feeds into this line, and that line will still be as a part of the city going forward, even when we abandon that portion behind the nuns.
Okay, in a long-term situation, would it make sense for us to look to abandon this line altogether and get out of that site?
Within the next, I'm gonna call it 50 years, 20 years, that might be something we looked into, but right now, there's no need to do that right now based on the projections we have for flow ratings that we have. If we were to abandon that one, we would be looking at an additional river crossing for the sanitary sewer. But based on our current flow projections, that will handle it. But that area to the east that you're referencing, yes, that does need to go for those reasons. But it can handle what we've.
So the work we've been talking about along Michigan Avenue behind the nuns properties along the river there, to change our route and not use this line at some point in the future, is whatever work we're doing with that other project need to be changed to accommodate a different route to abandon this line at some point.
Not as a part of what we've talked about with replacing that area behind the nuns. No, this portion is not a part of that. We can handle it based on the flows that we've changed now with Ferris Avenue and with that lift station. This will accommodate it, but we don't have to get rid of this as a part of that. If it did, that would change. There's no need to do that. There's no need to abandon that. This portion that we're talking about is a part of that work. Hopefully we're on the same wavelength.
Well, I'm trying to think, you know, in a perfect world, if we start out with a clean sheet of paper, we wouldn't want to take this route through this property because of these issues. So as we're rebuilding our system to the east, are we rebuilding it in such a way that it's going to accommodate rerouting that line so that we're no longer using it and not going to incur tremendous additional expense to do work twice on the east side that we're fixing to reroute the line?
No, because if we were gonna do maintenance on this line in the future, that line that we're talking about in this Midwest site was built with cast iron pipe and was put in 1943. It is in good shape, comparatively speaking. And, know what I mean, we had an issue up there about 5 or 6 years ago that was dealt with. We have a couple different options for that one. That's a very good candidate for pipe lining if we were to do any kind of preventative maintenance on it. So that's something that I would look towards doing. We don't necessarily have to excavate it. If we do, based on what we know of the restrictive covenants, we had excavated in that site. We knew all the chemicals that we were dealing with. That's part of what led to this agreement. Right now, as long as we don't haul materials off site, we can excavate it, put them right back in the hole. We just want to make sure that the materials don't leave the site. They're allowed to stay there if we ever had to, say, excavate it. We just want to make sure they're following the protocols. The material we excavate stays right on site, goes right back into the hole. And that's what we did with that north and south right of way of Francisco when we did that project. Made sure none of those materials actually left the site. And we were allowed to do that because there's the due diligence the Total has on it, and he also recommended you don't have to haul it off, you just put it back in because it's been identified as being. But as far as any long-term work of what we're talking about behind the nuns, there's no reason for us to have to reroute this portion or change it.
Okay, thank you. And I guess it sounds like you're very confident our crews have been in there excavating in the past, it sounds like, so.
Our crews.
In the future, you have confidence that.
In my career, no. Our crews
skill?
in my career, my 20 years, our crews have never been up there to excavate anything,
Okay.
simply because it is Total's site. And Total's Midwest, Valero, whatever company they're gonna operate under, and this one is Midwest Properties, is what it's listed under. We always contact them before we do anything up there for those reasons, find out what's up there, what do you recommend. We don't wanna make anything worse, we wanna make sure our people are protected. The problems that we've had on site have been Midwest's problems in my career, and they hired their own contractor to do it. When we did the Francisco project, it was the city's contractor that worked on that right-of-way. We had several meetings with Midwest representatives and their environmental consultant, and that's how we knew what we were able to do with our construction going forward, having the city's contractor replace into that portion, and make sure we follow their protocols.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Good explanation, I appreciate it. Anybody else have questions?
Yes. Dave, is there any remote possibility that someday we get a break in that sewer line and we go in there and we contact Eagle, and Eagle says, one of these chemicals that's in there cannot be disturbed? You can't dig.
That-
Or, I mean, is that so remote that it's silly, or is that?
That's not been identified as a part of this restricted covenants unless there are federal changes where they have to go back in and testing methods change.
Okay.
And they're able to identify more chemicals that aren't known at this time. I will never tell you a guaranteed, no, that will never happen because testing methods always change because of environmental policy and changes. They own that cradle to grave because of contamination. So maybe in 10 years, there's a testing method and they say, hey, like PFAS is a good example.
Yeah,
They were
or
already-
asbestos or something. No, you can't touch
It's,
it.
you know, I could talk about that now because they were at a point where they were ready to start doing the closeout process here on the east side of town, but PFAS came to light and they were able to test for that. Now, all of a sudden, that's a game changer. They're not as far advanced into abandoning that site as they thought they were. So I don't want to say that carte blanche with any of their sites because if there's testing methods that change and they have to look at any other known contaminants, carcinogens, anything that may be, that's a game changer. And if they have to go there and test it, that will change it. And I will bet you anything there'll be another restrictive covenants that comes that says we've now identified this. Now you cannot dig here because we found this. And we don't want anything to be released into the atmosphere. That very
Right.
well could be the case, but as of this point in time, no, that's not listed on this agreement.
Okay.
Any of those contaminants.
Okay, thank you.
And Roger, I think that's why I want to make sure we're planning to abandon that at some point in the future.
Yeah, because
it's sooner or
that
later,
could-
something like that's gonna
something
happen.
will happen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
more
can't
likely
touch
than
this.
not, I would
Yeah.
think, at this point in our lives. I hate to say it, but
True.
it's just the reality of what we deal with today. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. I believe we had a motion and support on the table. So all those in favor would be yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. The motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, David. Appreciate the information. Moving on to reports. Commissioners may receive the following reports by one resolution, or any commissioner may remove any item within the section for individual discussion and vote. We have reports from the building permits report. We have the building permits for September and October, there's two. Police Department for October. Planning Commission draft minutes for November. Alma Downtown Development Authority minutes for October. Alma Downtown draft minutes for November. And interim city manager report for November 2021. Your pleasure.
Eric, do you want yours pulled? And-
Yes.
Talk about a couple things, yeah.
Move to approve 1 through 6.
Support.
Motion support. Any comments or questions? Additional reports to be pulled? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. The motion is carried. We have pulled the report, so we entertain a motion to hear Eric's report.
Support.
And motion support. Eric, you're on the floor.
Just want to give you a couple briefs on the North State Street water main project. We are moving along. They did pass their bacteria test today, so they are hooking into the 4-inch and everything going well. Hopefully we can open up Center Street hopefully by the end of the week, Monday. So everything is moving along. Everything is happening like it should. So water shutoffs, we had that on the agenda to talk about. But basically back during the COVID pandemic, the state of Michigan, as part of trying to keep people, their hygiene and keeping everything at home working, they did allow people to didn't allow us to shut them off if they weren't for not paying it. So that has been rescinded since March of this year, but we have continued on. We talked about this a few months ago. As a city, we have continued to do that voluntarily at this point, and as many other communities have done too. So we just want to talk to you a little bit about that tonight. If we want to continue that practice, if we do, we need to look at amending our policy. The Downtown Development Authority Board has a recommendation for a tree proposal for the downtown trees. Obviously, this board and the DDA board have talked at great lengths, and all kinds of people at great lengths about the trees downtown. They were put in the late 70s, early 80s, and they have reached their life expectancy for sure. So, and back in the 2022 budget, City Commission did put aside $30,000 to develop a landscape project plan for the downtown. And knowing that these trees need to be replaced and how big they are, it's going to change the look and the feel of what the downtown will look like. So I've had a few meetings with the Downtown Development Authority Board. We put together an RFP to look at the trees, and the reason why we're just looking at the trees as opposed to something, I guess, more in depth. We have looked at things more in depth and have plans in the past that we've done streetscape wise that we couldn't afford to do. We know we need other capital down there, the parking lots, the alleys, the drainage, the lighting, all needs to be replaced. So keeping that in mind, we focused in on the trees and what we could do with that in the coming years. The RFP that we put out we sent this out to 8 different firms across the state of Michigan. Request 2 public meetings to discuss the current and future trees, placement of those trees, and take comment from the public about the trees and the process of removing them. Provide a recommendation for replacement and maintenance for the tree that we choose. Provide a plan for placement of the new trees so it makes sense aesthetically. Right now there's 73 locations downtown that we call the tree box locations. Not all 73 need to be replanted, so that's part of this discussion. How many do we replace? That's part of this discussion. Provide a review and recommendation of trees in the parking lots 1, 3, 4, and 7. Some of those are in good shape, some of those are not. And just to get while we're down there, take a look at those trees also. Provide some locations for new trash receptacles in the project area. And that's what we asked for, and we did receive 3 proposals back from that request. Giffords and Webster, they're out of Birmingham. They submitted a proposal for $9,600 to put together the plan, and $1,000, up to $1,000 reimbursable expenses. OHM Advisors had broken their proposal out into 4 tasks for a total of $19,040. The DDA we talked about that 1 task that we could remove for $2,400. We could take $24 off that. And then Rural Professional Services provided us a lump sum amount of $10,500. After reviewing these proposals and what they could provide to us and expertise, the DDA has on the agenda tonight for your consideration that recommendation to approve Giffords Webster to come in and help the community walk through that process of looking at the trees, removal, replacement, maintenance, and just because it's going to be such a big change, just to get the proper input for them. Right along with that, we also discussed the downtown capital improvements that are other than the trees. Obviously, we all know that the parking lots, the alleys are in desperate need of updating. And along with that we don't see is the drainage underneath of it. The drainage is almost more important than the parking lots themselves, because obviously if this water is getting into our buildings downtown, that deteriorates our assets that we do generate our income from. So we took a look at the lots here. Right now we still have lots 3, 1, 7, 6, and 2 to complete. We spoke with OHM engineering firm to get a feel for what the design costs for what's left would cost us to do. And what they're proposing, and it is a worst case scenario, because the parking lots are so beat up that it can't just be a mill and resurface. It has to be basically a reconstruction. So that does cost more. What they project for what we have left down there to look at the parking lots, alleys, and drainage is between $90,000 and $110,000 to do survey, demolition plans, site plans, grading, utility work, construction details, and if we want them to do landscaping and lighting plan, obviously that can be unique. The estimated cost for reconstruction of those parking lots, alleys, and drainage, they estimate between $2 million to 2.5 million. Again, that was for reconstruction. And if there's a project that they find that, hey, we can resurface this and not have to reconstruct it, that could bring the cost down. We just discussed the trees a little bit, but just to give you an idea, I spoke with Al Albrecht, our Public Works Superintendent, about what it costs to remove those types of trees in the town. We are looking at about $800 a tree, depending how many you take down at a time, the more that costs and what you take down. There is 67 trees left in what we're calling the project area. So that's a cost of $53,600 just in removing of trees. Now, that doesn't include, we will have to remove some stump grinding, that sort of thing, to replant trees. And if they're down there good, well enough, that's the places that we're not replacing trees, talk about what we may do on those empty spots. Streetlights downtown, we've slowly been changing out to some LED lighting. The single fixture lights in the downtown, those run $5,000 a light. The double fixtures, we don't have too many more of those left, there's only 5 of those left. Those run $500 a pop. Believe it or not, we have 83 single light fixtures down there yet. So at $5,000 a piece, we're still looking at $415,000 just on the single lights. The double lights at $42,500 for the 5 double lights that are left there. And we can start putting those into the capital every year, do 6 to 8 if we thought about doing it that way. That would also save us hopefully some dollars on the energy costs. They are all metered downtown now, so we do receive a bill in 6 different locations down there from that. And then lastly, the property east of Jerome that the city's been slowly acquiring over the years. The city does own all that property over there now. We have demoed all the structures on site over there. And the next step here, the Eagle has reached out to Greater Gratiot and to our Brownfield Authority and has offered, they found some money and offered to help us pay for phase 1 of that property over there, phase 1 environmental. Phase 1 is a very basic environmental. It's basically doing some historical research. There's really no, you really don't do any digging or probing of any soils like that. But part of that, what they've asked, whoever the contractor may be, they've also asked them to work with the refinery to get all their information, documentation on all the property they own surrounding it. Anytime we're trying to market this site, the potential buyer is obviously very concerned about what those other properties may be, what the status of those properties may be. So that's going to be part of that also. The Gratiot County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority will be the applicant, and they will be asking us to provide support on that application. So they'll be here at their next meeting. We'll need to provide them access to the property and then approve them to, we'll basically signing what we did with the declaration notice that we just signed with the MRP, a statement of disclaimer with Eagles, and the findings, the contractor's scope of assessment, obligations, environmental liability, all these things that the contractor does or will be finding on there is not the liability of the state of Michigan. And that's what basically we have to sign to have them do that work. So they will be here with us next meeting to request that from us. Very good.
Thank you.
Questions?
Okay, what's the first question?
Is there any chance that all of these downtown redevelopment projects and streetlights to parking lots and everything else could be covered by any of the new federal money? The reimbursement, possible?
Possibly. It's an infrastructure
Mhm,
project, but it's definitely the drainage would be closer than maybe the parking lots themselves, but we'd have to check it out.
Mhm, okay.
The lights themselves, there is some revenue that comes back from Consumers Energy as part of their program that if you upgrade electrical products, that there is some rebates on those. It's not a lot, but when you're putting in that many lights, it does add up over time, so.
We're talking about a whole bunch of money.
Yes, Oh, yes, yes, very much so. And that's why when we were talking to the board about the trees and such, that they are time to remove them. And it's, maybe we just focus on that and then get that done. And then I'd put together this into our capital program. We're being very conservative.
Anybody else?
Well, I mean, I understand that we don't just go in there and cut down trees and put new ones in, but that seems like I mean, I know it's similar to a building, I guess, because it's our whole downtown, but, is that normal to pay that much money to have somebody tell us what to do as far as the trees? I mean, I just think, and again, I don't know, I'm just asking, because I mean, we have MSU Extension close here, you know, we get that award from Arbor Day I mean, I don't know, you know, it's MML, I mean, is there anything that we already have that we pay for that would help us with that, or we really have to pay
Well-
$10,000 just for a plan?
You have to. I mean,
No,
there's
I-
nothing forcing it.
No, I'm just
Did we
asking,
did we
I don't
check with our
understand.
arborist? We have an arborist on staff, right? Somebody's name,
Bob Albrecht is our tree forester.
okay, so is he capable of doing that work?
Um,
Telling us where to plant a tree,
Well-
which of those 73 boxes of trees should go in?
well, some of that, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well, the discussion is, because obviously I don't know if you've heard that, but I've heard that from all different folks, different organizations. I don't want the tree there, I don't want the tree there, I don't want the tree there. So, this is just what I've heard, and part of what they'll do is, you know, from an aesthetic standpoint, these are where the trees need to go, and this is our recommendation where to put them, not that, because,
They're not going in the same place? They were not-
well, where you put them, because there's 73 locations, we're not gonna plant them all back. So,
Okay.
where to put them so they aesthetically make sense.
Okay.
Because believe me, I've had 30 people.
I
at
just
these
want- I mean,
tracks
I
with
get-
us where they say where they should go and not go, and
Personally send money to the Arbor Day, so they send me these things all the time that show various downtowns and things. I just didn't know if they offered services for cities that we could utilize as part of being, you know, I don't know. I guess I didn't think that we were putting them different places. I mean, we may not put as many in, but I didn't think we were opening it up to people telling us whether they wanted a tree there or not, because I think that's a kettle of worms I don't
it was
want.
awful.
I'm sure it is, and I don't think they get a
Well, I think
choice.
some of the objections are because of the size and the type of trees, which were put in apparently incorrectly years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And the size has become just massively overwhelming to people with tiny little leaves. And because they weren't maintained, they weren't, you know, I think they were intended to have been taken out 20 years ago, and we never did it as a city. And they've become just massively nuisance trees for the merchants downtown. If we would have had a program in place where they were replaced and kept it to be a miniature size, I think they'd be a lot less negatively impacting the merchants downtown.
It seems to me they were never supposed to get that big. I was on a committee in 1971 or 72 with Dr. Roth's wife, and we put the first flowering crab trees in, okay? That was, I think, the Arbor Club or somebody, you know, paid for a bunch of those, and they were beautiful trees and supposed to bloom at Highland Festival, and they'd be wonderful, and they were. But the flowering crab trees also produce berries, okay? And there were little blueberries all over the city, and nobody liked those. So they replaced them with the trees that were down there, which nobody thought would get taller than the buildings, and never thought of the problem with the little bitty leaves and stuff. And we've made mistakes twice, you know, and we better get it right this time.
Well,
I think,
that's
with what
kind
we
of the
put
reason
in.
the
Yeah.
discussion we've had
Yeah.
about bringing a
Well,
professional.
and we had professionals both of those times,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's, right here, we contacted MSU Extension, or the landscaping design school at MSU, we contacted, you know, any of the, you know, I know Keith Kolb or Randy Hahn, both are experts in this stuff. I think they're both, you know, graduates of MSU, and extensive knowledge along these lines. And if we want to
Or are
have,
there
if we
people
want to
at
have
the
a
college? I
community
don't know,
sort
are there
of a
people there at the
conversation
college?
about it, is anybody from the college
Yeah.
capable or willing to, can we hire somebody from the college for $500 to lead us in a conversation about it and save, I mean, it seems like thousands of dollars for what few tasks are going to be accomplished here. Seems to me to be
I believe the DDA's been talking about it for like 5 years, about what they were gonna do, at least 5
Long
years
time.
now. Right, about what they thought we should do.
I think that conversation's been going on for more like 25 or 30
Oh,
years,
okay.
to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, I'm just
Well,
saying, I've
I've
heard
been-
about it, I've heard about trees for 5 years, so I know that the DDA's been trying to come up with an idea.
When,
Well, and I know there needs to be a plan, I just wondered if some of our resources that are maybe less expensive would.
Yeah,
provide
and
a plan.
I have not found the this plan from 1970 of, written out why we chose what we chose, why they put them where they put them. There is nothing, that's why, that was the other reason, it's like, we have a document that shows what the maintenance plan is supposed to be, all those things. Hyatt Palmer, when I came to town, that was, the trees were the only thing they told us to leave alone. They said, change everything else, but the trees leave alone, but it's been 20-some-odd years.
Yeah.
So the trees have grown much more, so, it's up to the board, but this is, obviously, it's something that it's on the tip of everybody's tongue, and I hear from, not just property owners, business owners, but I hear from organizations that are in the community also, so. It's up to, it's a budgeted item from the city commission, so.
We
it's up to the
definitely need to
city
do it
commission.
right, and we have to have somebody that's an expert in being able to look at the city from above, from behind, from the front, from the back, and to see aesthetically what that's gonna look like, not just what this one tree is gonna look like in this spot. So, I don't know if we contacted a few of these local names that I brought up, just to see what their thoughts on it are. They
Yeah,
may say
I
go-
really
they may
think we
say go
should,
to an
yeah.
expert and pay the $9,000 or $10,000
Right.
Yeah.
So.
At least MSU and Alma College and,
But it can't hurt to reach
can't hurt,
out, and-
right.
But we definitely don't want just someone coming down and saying, well, this kind of tree would be a good tree.
Yeah, we've heard that storm.
Yeah.
Well, it strikes me, because we're talking state route, that there's, for lack of a better phrase, a limited menu of trees to choose from. Is that also?
There's not a lot, no.
I was gonna say, so if we have to pick between 5 trees, it may,
Might be
you know,
easier than
might
we
be
think.
easier than, yeah, it might be easier to get.
Mhm.
I don't know what that looks like there, so I'm just wondering if it's.
Well, it just seems like
if we're
there's gonna be a lot of
hemmed in
money
on
for
that
taking them
part,
down and putting them in, that we
maybe finding
might.
some of these other sources saying, here's the cards you've been dealt, tell us what you recommend.
I'm assuming too, that this is a lot more than just aesthetics too. I mean, when you're talking about the tree roots and where they're gonna end up and
Yeah.
all of that stuff too.
In the buildings
The
at
different,
this point,
yeah, the different types of trees, and so obviously whoever, you guys decide on better know, yeah,
what they're
it's
doing.
more than what they're gonna look like, I think.
Actually, the thing I've heard, this has nothing to do with trees exactly, except one of the concerns I've heard from business owners is the snow removal. And probably, as we think about that, those are aesthetics, business owners don't like having the snow piled up in front of their businesses, so that's a big issue. So there's, the 4 seasons of the trees, I guess.
I think the crews do a pretty good job of
Yeah.
managing the snow as best they can. Obviously,
Very limited. so
depends
it's work,
depends on
yeah.
the storm too, how the storm comes, when
Sure.
the snow falls, how long it lasts. Obviously, once the business activity starts downtown, they can't bring plows in, run them up down the sidewalk and, so they have
It's
to
an
wait.
interesting
So,
challenge.
Yeah, it is a tough challenge, but I think overall, my experience has been that they do a pretty darn good job for what they're tasked with.
For the most part, they do clean up most of the trees unless there's trees next to a trash can, next to something where they can't get the equipment between.
Yeah.
That's where the piles would be, but they go as close to the trees with the removal as they can, so that's the only explanation I can give you if there is a pile.
And I think part of it is re-educating the folks that work downtown. If you pile the snow around a tree and around a trash can, that makes it that much harder for them to push it out of the way, push it into the street to get rid of it. If they pile it in between those things and keep it clear around the tree and around the trash can,
Bob told me to tell the business owners to put it around the tree 2 years ago.
Okay, we can look into that.
that's
but
different
yeah,
than what I was always told.
that's- Yeah,
No,
that's.
we were at the
I've
library when he told me
understood
that.
this, Yeah, to get around the tree.
No.
Sorry.
Well,
Anything we can do to help.
it's gonna snow when we go
Jumping way
outside.
ahead, sorry, jumping up the next month, I didn't know.
Hopefully, many
Yeah.
months.
Yeah, okay.
But obviously, even in Hyatt Palma, for them to put in the Hyatt Palma study, trees are great, please leave the trees. That must have been a discussion, the exact same discussion we're having right now, that was
Right.
25 years ago.
Yeah, no, I'm all in favor
So
of the trees,
I just want to
wanna-
make sure whatever we do, because it's
Right.
gonna be a permanent thing for another 30 years.
The sidewalks were not heaving due to the roots in the
Yeah.
building, leaves or the branches weren't rubbing against the buildings and the roots in the sewer lines when Hyatt Palm was here, so. Yeah, I agree something needs to be done, but I just think there's more effective ways to do it, more efficient ways we can do it, so. Any additional comments or questions? Hearing none, we have a motion on the table to accept the interim city manager report for November 19, 2021. So all those in favor would be a yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be a no. Motion is carried. Next up, we consideration of a motion to appoint interim city manager Eric Ripley to the following boards and commissions: the Alma Housing Commission, Gratiot Community Airport Authority, the London Fire Board, Gratiot Area Water Authority, and the Gratiot Area Solid Waste Authority.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion support, or any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. The motion is carried. You are appointed. Congratulations. And a wonderful honor. And I believe your pay will increase by zero.
Zero for all those. For all of them.
Okay, good. Next, we have consideration of a resolution approving the reappointment of James Wheeler and Heather Theron to the Planning Commission for 3-year terms ending June 30, 2024. And a motion to support. Any comments or questions? I was under the impression Mr. Wheeler wasn't going to continue. Have you contacted him? Oh, no, okay.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
know
that's
that.
fine. We can appoint him and he can turn us down. I just read it. Any additional comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no. Motion is carried. We have appointments. Let's see who shows up. Moving down to consideration of appointment of Eric Ripley, interim city manager, and Greg Mapes, the mayor, to the Greater Gratiot Development Incorporated Board of Directors for a 1-year term expiring September 30, 2022. Your pleasure.
Approval.
Support.
We have motion support. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed would be no. Motion is carried. Couple more appointments. And another pay increase for you. New business, discussion on continuation of the current suspension of water shutoffs due to non-payment. This is discussion, so I.
Are we
Yep,
making a
I
motion
brought it
about
up
that?
a little bit in my newsletter. Curtis, if you wanna talk a little bit about,
Go up there and mostly on the stands. For 45 minutes. You know, still looks better. So, as Eric mentioned, we were under a mandate once the coronavirus pandemic hit that we were not allowed to do shut-offs, and I believe that started in November of 2020, somewhere in that, and it expired March 31st, 2021. At that time, City Manager Matt Schooley and Bill Pumorn, I don't know, Dave, if you were involved in this conversation or not, but made the decision at that time to continue, just indefinitely, to continue to postpone like most cities were doing shut-offs because obviously we're still in the middle of a pandemic and they thought that that was the, at the time, best thing to do. And it was my understanding at that time when I talked to Matt that it was just kind of a temporary thing for the time being while we kind of did some more research, kind of saw how the pandemic was going to progress over the next few months, what have you. It's now been 6 months, Matt's no longer here, and we never did actually update our policy, and our policy still says that we do shut-offs at 90 days. So I was to the point where I thought that it was time for us to decide first what you guys would like to do, and if it is a change to our policy, I'd like to actually make a physical change or amendment to our policy so that we are following what our policy says as opposed to just word of mouth, because to my knowledge, or at least we couldn't find anything when we looked where there was anything that was actually formally approved or written or anything to change it. So we just like to make sure that our policy and what we're doing is matching. So there are obviously benefits and concerns to either way. Obviously, I think from a humane standpoint, not shutting people's water off in the middle of winter and not shutting people's water off that are struggling, there's the humane aspect of wanting to continue to not do shutoffs. Just kind of briefly from a technical standpoint, how it would work, even if we are not doing shutoffs, the homeowner is still responsible, obviously, for the water. It's free. If they end up not paying and they get more than 6 months behind, it'll get rolled over onto their property taxes, there will be a lien, go on their taxes. They will get a notice. I think we usually send the notices out in mid to late April that says that you have until June 1st to get current, or else there will be a lien and it'll go on your taxes for the summer tax roll. And then obviously if they don't pay that, we turn it over to the county, and the county pays us and it does what they need to do with the house with all their other taxes. So from a financial standpoint, it's not like we're on the hook for people not paying. There's a delay in payment, obviously, if people continue to not pay, but the theoretical answer is that we will always be made whole of it eventually. We might have to go through a few channels before it gets to that, but we will always be made whole for that cost. There's obviously a cost for us to go in and doing shut-offs, so both creating the work orders, doing the billings, sending the notices, having somebody physically go out and do the shut-offs, and then if they get turned back on, going out to turn it back on, so it would save time and cost on our end from an employee's standpoint, so that would be another advantage to not wanting to do it. The biggest concern that I see is for if you are a landlord, there's kind of a concern of if you have a tenant that's not paying and you can't shut them off, and I do very much understand that that is a concern. There are some things that we have in place that can mitigate that risk. We have a policy where a landlord can make a tenant put a deposit down before they move in with us that we could use to pay if they get behind on their water bills, and we do have a couple of landlords that take advantage of that already. They could also keep it in their name, the landlord could keep it in their name and just charge the tenant directly, because if it's in their name, then they can choose to shut it off if non-payment. Obviously, there's legal things, but.
Yeah, you're not gonna shut off a tenant's water while they're in there. You can throw them out for not paying.
Right, yeah.
But you're not
Right.
shutting off their water.
Right, but then it's in their name, they're getting the bill, because it's the landlord's responsibility eventually, if it's not paid, if they could keep it in their name.
Their
all I
remedy
was-
is an eviction, and especially now that the moratorium's been lifted, because they
Correct.
were really hamstrung for a
Exactly,
while.
they had no.
Because they couldn't
yes,
do anything,
they had
but they couldn't do
nothing,
anything
so-
about rent either, which was,
Correct.
you know,
So-
that was tough. But,
So, yeah, that is definitely one concern that we would have by not doing the shut-offs, is that it does put an extra level of stress on landlords especially if they don't have tenants that are doing what they're supposed to. So, at this point, we're not necessarily making a recommendation, we're just opening it up to you guys to say, whatever you guys decide we wanna do, we just wanna make sure that we have a policy set in place and we are following what our policy says, so that we're not deviating from what our policy is, so.
and just guys, if I might too, if you're talking about amending the policy, this is a unique event, obviously. So you're not, you know, my advice, I guess, would be, you might amend the policy to deal with a specific event like this, but you want to keep the ability to shut it off during
Well,
normal times. I mean,
Yes, before we go there even, can we get an idea of what the scope of the problem is? I mean, how many properties are we talking about that are behind? How far behind are they? What's the dollar value we're talking about? How deep are these people in? And what's the, I mean, let's get a,
Actually, I would be curious, was there a spike? When you suspended the policy, was there a spike of people not paying, or did it not make any difference?
There was a slight increase, I wouldn't call it a spike, I mean, there was a slight increase, especially, really, the major part of the increase actually came before the mandate even came into play, because most of the people that weren't paying were people that were struggling before the mandate even came into place. So we really didn't see, there was an increase, but it wasn't a
I
spike.
mean, there was a lot of money handed out during
Right.
that period of time,
Yeah.
for people to cover things.
Yeah, and that,
So
and that helped too, because there was a lot more
that's
being
why I kinda wonder if,
available,
are we
so.
talking about something that's not even a problem at this point?
there's a couple of things too. There's money at the state level from the federal money that came in for tenants and landlords.
To get
And
this-
some of that's still tied up, but there is money for that. But I agree with you, Greg. I mean, I think a lot of it was early on, when there was no help, that first month
The
or
first
two
couple
before.
of months,
Right,
yeah, but then the money started flowing and,
right. With the stimulus money and everything else too.
yeah.
We had, the last report we ran, which I believe would have been right at the beginning of November, there were 118 accounts that were 90 days or more past due. And the total dollar value on all of that was a little under 40,000. So,
119, you said, and how does?
118.
118,
Yeah.
so how does that compare with what's been our history? Do you have any idea there?
I think, the last couple years, I think when we end up rolling over onto taxes, I think we've normally rolled over somewhere in like 40 to 50 accounts onto taxes that are delinquent, so, but that's obviously after sending them, there might be more after notices and after, I didn't do a whole lot of the
Because there's
history.
always gonna be some people that are renters, and have a bill, they move out, and they just are, their
Yeah.
plan is to stick the landlord with it. So I assume there's gonna be a certain
There's
number
always gonna be
that's
something.
pretty continuously on that program.
Correct.
I think we should stick back to our policy. Like,
Oh.
what we what we had before we changed it during that pandemic.
Do we have work, I mean, I assume there's workout plans, people payment plans. If you get behind this, we've already got a system in place to, I believe, to allow them to make payments for past bills and catch up, and are people doing that?
Some, yeah. I mean, I don't, not a lot, but I don't think there was a lot before. I mean,
Yeah.
Right. They get letters, they get calls,
yes.
they get
And we
chances.
have continued the letters, just because we're not doing shut-offs, we still send, when they reach, we still send letters out letting them know they're past due and letting them know that they need to, basically, you need to contact us and make a payment plan. We just leave off the part that if you don't, we're shutting you off. So,
I guess I really don't think I've got a great feel for what the desperation level is of the community out there, and maybe Audra could help. I know you deal with the population that is a little more challenged than quite often.
I mean, you know what I'm gonna say, is I don't want anybody getting their water shut off. I think we're in the, probably for our county, and Marie's here, maybe she can speak to it, this is the worst time right now for the pandemic that this county is going through, as far as the sickness and the, illness part of it, so, I mean,
But your agency has access to, for people to get both.
we do not do water bills, so
I didn't know.
no.
I thought that 2-in-1, oh, you're not 2-in-1, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of poverty in our community, I think we all know that. I'm not one to say, let's shut the water off as a first.
Well, I'm not either, I'm just concerned.
No, either not, but.
You know, I guess,
Outside bills.
do you know, and maybe anecdotally it isn't fair to ask this question, I mean, do we have any idea, are the agencies, because I know, I used to serve on Gratiot Emergency Housing, and we paid a lot of water bills.
Yeah, I don't
And
know
there are
what-
other
That's what I
agencies
was
that
thinking,
also
like
did things like
Community
that.
Action Agency would have.
Is it
And if-
They
2-in-1?
do. I don't know if it's 2-in-1, but
If
Community Action
those
Agency does
agencies are
housing and
all at their
modernization.
limits, they're desperate for money, they're running out of funds, I mean, if
I don't
the
know
well
that
is
there's an
dry
agency
for those
right now
people,
that
so to speak.
pays water bills. I know there's agencies right now that can help with heat costs,
Mm-hmm.
but I have not heard of anybody paying
Yeah,
water
I,
bills
yeah,
right now.
Community Action does heat,
Um,
weatherization,
Our community action agency is 8CAP,
right.
which is right next door in the Wilcox building, and I don't know that they pay water bills. I can look into it and see if there's anybody that's doing that, but I've not ever heard of that. Heat is the big thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Heat and
I'm,
propane.
like you, I don't think anybody here is anxious to shut people's
No,
water
I
off, that's not.
guess so what he's asking though is, do we keep with this pandemic policy that we're in the middle of right now, it's on the call it, even though that's happening, but I think that's what we should do. I don't think we should go back to our old ways just yet.
I agree.
But I don't think it needs amending our entire city policy. I mean, I think we can do do it properly, temporarily.
yeah.
Yes.
And I guess, are there any modifications to our repayment plan for those that are behind? We've got a process out there, I don't know what it is, we talked about it a long time ago, I know, is there modifications to that repayment policy that we could implement? You know, if we currently give you 6 months to catch up, could we make it 12? To keep people, you know, going on a plan, rather than,
Do whatever we want.
you know,
I
it
think.
seems to me the longer you suspend this, the deeper they're going to get. You aren't necessarily doing anybody favors by helping them get farther and farther behind. That doesn't always help folks.
Does the timetable for it going on their taxes change at all? Has that changed?
I believe it's that, I think by city charter, we can only put them on the summer taxes, so it's still only,
But I guess what I'm saying is this voluntary moratorium on the city's part, we're not shutting water off. Am I correct that that does not affect the timetable for delinquent water bills to go on people's taxes?
I believe you are correct. I believe you
Okay.
would still, if you are still past due, you would, if you still meet whatever the criteria was before, you would still get it rolled over on your taxes if you did not make a
Okay.
payment plan or get current.
And you don't know if we've stopped doing that. I mean, obviously, we stopped following our policy some time ago, and, you know, Matt and others took it upon themselves just to change that process without anything. Did they change the policy or the process or the procedures as far as putting it on the tax rolls?
I don't think I'm pretty
And
sure.
maybe you need to
someone-
check on that.
Right.
I don't mean to
Well,
put you
like I
on the
said,
spot.
we don't do them for the winter ones, so it wouldn't have been an impact now, it wouldn't, so, and as far as when we did the summer ones, it wouldn't have been we wouldn't have had the mandate more than 6 months at that point, so I don't think, well, I guess it would have, there would have been like about a 6-week period, because anything on the summer tax would have been anything that was past due before 12/31, and the mandate didn't come out until November or December of 2020, so we would have been talking about a very sliver of, at that point, this would be the discussion once summer taxes next year roll around, because we'd be talking about a full year with the mandate, so. My guess is, and I don't know this right on the spot, my guess is we followed just our normal policy for last summer when we put it on the summer taxes, which, like I said, at most would have only covered like a 2-week period, 3-week period. 'Cause I think it was earlier mid-December when they did the mandate.
And that
So
tax
we're-
foreclosure process is about a 3-year process.
Yes.
Well, and
Three-year
where,
plus
if they're
process.
renting, who's tax, I mean, the renters don't.
Well,
Still
then
on
the landlord.
Right.
It goes
go to
so
the landlord.
everybody-
That's why I said
We
that
have a
about
lot
the
of
landlord
rentals in
concern.
Belmont,
Yeah.
and so
Right.
there's a lot of, and
But
they
so it's
haven't been
not,
able to
there isn't
collect
a
rent
plan
for
for
a year.
the individual person renting the apartment who's behind in their water. It goes on to the land, like if, say, all 12 people were behind in a unit, building or whatever, it goes on the landlord's taxes, not anything for them.
A question too. My water bill contains 3 items on it. Okay, it's got water and sewage, and then it has garbage disposal, and it has city trash pickup, the leaks and all that kind of thing. What's your definition of water bill? If I choose not to pay that, or can't pay that, what about my garbage pickup and my, what happens there? Are those things suspended as well?
I
or-
believe, the way we are currently operating the entire utility bill.
Okay, the
Water, sewer,
utility
and
bill
trash
is one, all
My
right.
understanding, I guess I can,
Okay.
I'd verify, I'd look in, but that is my understanding, that it is the entire,
Water, okay,
Utility
the
bill.
utility bill,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't think we can suspend those other things. I mean, the trash company isn't, we can't tell them, don't pick up at this
Right,
address
yeah,
and that
right,
address,
right,
it's at
right.
this house. and-
Right, yeah.
And the sewer lines are not metered coming back, so.
No.
it's
And there's no
just
shut off on
coming
the
back.
sewer, so we can't do that. We need to write my
that's
first
why,
bill.
yeah,
Don't
it's,
be shutting off my sewer.
I don't think we wanna start that process.
and the total past due, the amount that I stated is, and actually even the total amount is, because some
It's
of
all
that
of those.
118 might also include people that are trash only, because that's not uncommon for
Yeah.
us to have some trash only clients that just choose to automatically roll over on their taxes.
Would it be fair to ask Curtis to come back and describe the process we have in place to help folks get caught up once they get behind? And take a look at that first and see if maybe modifying that would be a proper course of action in this case?
Yeah, I'd like more
Rather than
information.
get some more information. If there's other questions that anybody else has, give Curtis a chance to research it and let's really get a feel for the scope of the issue, what we're dealing with, and how we can best correct it and help people and
Absolutely.
move forward.
Kurt, the one other question that I had that I didn't hear the answer to, maybe you gave it. You said currently there are 118 accounts that are delinquent for about $140,000, okay?
40,000.
40,000,
Yeah.
okay.
Under-
What,
little under 40.
what would be a normal number instead of that 118? What would it have been 2 years ago or?
Like I said, I think typically when we roll over onto the taxes, at that time, I think the last couple of years, it's been between 40 and 50, I
Okay.
think. I mean, it
Okay.
obviously will vary throughout the year. It's not uncommon for this time of year for people to get
Yeah.
behind and then get caught up in early spring, so
Okay,
it-
so it roughly doubled. It's roughly
Maybe you
doubled.
could bring some more information along those lines too,
Mhm.
rather than just, I think, because
Yeah.
that's not really fair.
Yeah,
to
'cause you weren't
Curtis to-
here, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't
Yeah.
here, he hasn't been through the process and.
I can tell you what my account's been.
Because we're gonna believe our number as, as gospel when you tell us that, and it's not fair that you haven't had a chance to look it up, so. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Curtis.
Thanks,
you guys.
Okay. Next is consideration of the November 11, 2021 recommendation of Family Downtown Development Authority to accept the proposal from Default Webster for evaluation of downtown trees and development of a plan for replacement and maintenance in the amount of $9,600 with the added budget of $1,000 for reimbursable expenses. Your pleasure. We have talked about it, yes.
Can we wait till Eric gets back with some of the?
We are waiting for somebody to make a motion right now, so we can do whatever you please to do, or whatever you can do for your friends to do. You can vote to table, yes.
Yeah, table.
Was that a motion?
It was.
Let's just table, and we have support. Okay,
There we go.
Additional comments or questions? Was your intention to table till the next meeting, or is it a definite table? Does it matter to you?
I could defer to Eric.
Or, yeah, Yeah, give me a month, because the DDA
Second
meets the
meeting in
second
December.
Thursday of December. so.
Comments, questions, anything else? All right, all those in favor of tabling would be yes.
Yes,
Any opposed would be no. The motion's passed. Number 3 is consideration of a request from interim city manager to conduct a closed session permitted under section 8C of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.268 for strategy/negotiation of a collective bargaining agreement. And the expectation when we come out of executive closed session, would be that we are going to take action on this agreement. Is that correct? That's what I'm reading here? Okay. So I believe we need a roll call vote in order to move into a closed session.
We need a motion
We need a
first.
motion first.
And, and my understanding was we might want a couple of other people here to help with this, maybe? Is that,
I'm gonna, if I could have, Public Safety Director Mark Williams come in also to help out with any questions on the agreement.
which
That's our choice?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so the motion should be, moving to closed session with the addition of,
With the
Public
addition of
Safety
Public Safety
Director
Director.
and myself, if you want me in there too.
I'll make the motion
We're gonna-
for Mark Williams and
Okay.
Tony Kissel.
Before we do that, would you give, maybe, we've got some scouts here, want to give a little background on why we might move into closed session, and why we typically don't do things in closed session?
Yeah.
Tony? Would that be, is that a fair question to?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Work with the scouts, I
Why
think
not?
they're here for an education, so we want to give them their money's worth tonight.
Yeah, well, great.
You just want to go home, don't you?
I'll make it quick. I think I've seen this guy before. And I think it was, anyway, yeah.
wasn't in court, was it?
No,
Okay,
no,
all
no,
right,
these
okay.
people are exemplary
I see.
citizens, these guys
Okay,
are
all right.
top notch. The way this is supposed to work, and it does, we're supposed to be as transparent as possible, that when the city government, the state government, whatever, you do whatever you're gonna do, you do it in public, so that the citizens understand and they know what you're doing. So nothing's done behind closed doors, behind anybody's back, okay? But there are reasons sometimes where you think, okay, that's true, but there are sensitive things sometimes that you need to talk about in private. One of those things, when you're deciding on a collective bargaining agreement, bargaining with the union for a certain group of employees, and you're talking about strategy and all that kind of stuff, if you did that in an open meeting, you let everybody know what your strategy was, and sometimes you don't really want to do that. So we'll go in there and discuss that in private, come back out here and make the final decision. So the final decision's still in public. But some of the stuff that we talk about in private, like the negotiation strategy and stuff, we do that there so the whole world doesn't necessarily know, because that can affect our ability to strike the bargain that we want to strike. And there's a few reasons for that, different things besides the collective bargaining stuff. Later on, there's going to be a evaluation of an employee, and sometimes the employee says, you know what, I just assume we do that in private, because it's a personal thing, and so that'll be done in private. If there's any action to be taken, though, that's taken in public. So there are a few reasons why you go, for privacy reasons and other things like that, you go in private just for that reason, and you come out and you make your decision. That's the.
Well said, Tony, I couldn't have said it better
I
myself,
don't know.
that's why I asked you. I thank you for that, and hopefully it made sense to
Yeah.
our scouts here tonight.
So now they all know they don't want to be a lawyer, which is a good thing. You want an honorable profession.
Yes.
Before we vote, we're gonna be in session, private session twice.
Closed session.
Do we want to allow people to make their comments, so they don't have to stay
Could.
around here?
Yeah, we can do that, yes.
can do
It's
that.
the pleasure of the commission,
Okay.
but
Let's do that.
that might be
Okay.
a
So
reasonable thing.
is that a motion to change the agenda? to
Absolutely, I've
allow
been
for
making
public
motions
comment?
left, right, and center, so sure.
Yes, we have-
Support.
We have a motion and support on the table to allow the public to make public comments at this point in time, in case they would like to make their comments and then leave and not stick around for our two closed sessions that we're going to do, which we will be taking action, we expect to take action afterwards. But anyway, if anybody would like to address the public, or address the commission at this point, please go to the podium, state your name and address, and share your thoughts with the commission. Oh, yeah, let's have a vote on that motion, I'm sorry, we did have a motion, my bad. All those in favor be yes?
Yes.
Any opposed would be no? Okay, that is passed. Now, if anybody from the public would like to comment to the commission, please go to the podium, state your name and address, and share your thoughts. Anyone at this time? All right.
Hi, my name is Rob Duhadway. I own a dance studio here in town. I live over on 3rd Avenue here, been here for almost 30 years. I wanted to express my support for Eric Ripley for city manager. I've understood through the grapevine that he's not even being offered an interview. I think that's wrong. He's dedicated 22 years, or 23 years, I don't know, 20-plus years of his life to this community, not only as a city manager or interim city, whatever, to volunteering with different groups. In my dealings with him professionally and personally, it's always been exemplary, and I think it would be a great misfortune to lose his talent here in town. And pretty much that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank
very
you,
much,
Rob.
Anybody else to address the commission? Okay, seeing none, I think we'll now entertain a motion to enter into closed session for the purpose of discussing a potential contract.
I think, Michelle, did you make that?
I did make that.
You had the motion on the
Yes.
table, did you have
Second.
support? There was support, does that
With-
motion
with
include
Mark
Mark
and-
Williams?
Yeah, I think she said that.
And anybody else? An attorney there too?
Yeah, I said Tony.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You heard- okay.
Okay, so we have motion support, and we need a roll call vote, I believe. Sarah, if you will, please.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Stahl? Yes. Commissioner Warden? Mayor Mapes?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Yes.
Commissioner Holman?
Yes.
Commissioner Pickles?
Yes.
Okay. Motion is carried. We will go into closed session, and we will be back. Shouldn't take us too long, I wouldn't imagine. Okay, we are back. So I think at this point, we'll entertain a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement. Nick?
I will make that motion, that we approve the collective bargaining agreement. There is a proviso in paragraph 13.1, subparagraph C, the employee contribution that in the agreement we read was 4.65, it should be 5.85%, which matches the city contribution.
Well said.
It only took 15 minutes for me to figure out how to-
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there support?
Support.
We have motion support. Any additional comments or questions? And just for background, this does kind of mirror the contract we did earlier with the Police Officers Association. And traditionally, it follows the same pattern that we've done in the past years, so nothing really new here. So with that, all those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Any opposed say no. Motion's carried. Okay, hopefully we have a contract then. Now, we'll move down to M, which is consideration of request from the mayor to conduct a periodic evaluation of an employee in closed session at the request of the employee, which is permitted under section 8A of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 13.268. It's a pleasure.
Support.
And motion support, comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say yes.
Well, let's do
No,
that.
we don't, we gotta have a roll call, sorry. Yep, thanks, Tony. Well, Sarah? Not again.
Commissioner Pickla?
Yes.
Commissioner Fitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Stahl? Yes. Commissioner Wernick? Mayor Mapes?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harrington?
Yes.
Commissioner Ullman?
Yes.
Okay, we're back in closed session.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. Appropriations, we got started in business, we're not taking any action based on the last closed session, so. I don't believe, I guess, entertain a motion if anybody has one, but I don't believe there's any.
Move to pay the appropriations.
Okay,
Support.
any questions or comments? Hearing none, those in favor say yes,
Yes.
Yes.
any opposed would be no. All right, commissioner comments. Audra, go first.
Oh, just have Thanksgiving.
There we go.
Short and sweet.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, I'm original, happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, Roxanne.
Nothing additional to add, thanks.
Roger?
Just that the community Thanksgiving dinner, as of about 5 o'clock, reservations are closed. We hit 400. So, and that's how much food we bought, so I don't want to overdo it.
Big undertaking, so.
We have
thank you for
400,
that.
so
And the
you're
community
welcome.
thanks you for that.
You're welcome.
Sarah? Tony?
I'm all set too.
Eric?
Come on for the holidays, December 10th.
It's coming up, you bet. Okay, yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, be safe everyone, safe travels. Oh, I guess public comment, if anybody.
We did that.
We did that already.
They all public.
We don't give them a second chance?
Well, you could, I guess, if you wanted
Anybody,
to.
I mean, you stuck around,
They
so if you
had an
wanna talk to
opportunity
anybody.
before, you know.
Megan, Brendan, anything?
Nothing? Okay. With that, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Motion support, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no.